Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we are back with another one. It is Brian S. Arnold here, and this is the Authority Project. And I'm here with my new good friend here, Tracey Bissett, and she is here. She says to show us how we can become financially fit. Is that right, Tracey?
Absolutely. I'm really looking forward to it, Brian.
Awesome. Well, we shall see. We shall see on this incredible episode of the Authority Project.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, feast your eyes and tune your ears. It's that time again. We are live with another episode of The Authority Project. It's the video podcast streamed on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Periscope, where we talk to digital marketers, business coaches, and creators of all kinds on how they've built authority in their field and how you can mimic their success. Developing authority, building your audience, and attracting better clients to your own business. Now, without further ado, let's bring to the virtual stage your host, Brian S. Arnold.
All right, we are back with another one, folks. It is Brian S. Arnold here, and this is the Authority Project. You are the project, and we want to slap authority to your name so you can sell more of what you're great at. And I am here with Tracey Bissett. How are you doing today?
I'm well, thank you. Really excited to be here.
Awesome. I am honored to have you on the show. And we got questions, but before we dive in, Tracey, tell us first of all who you are. Who is Tracey Bissett? Who are you personally and then professionally?
So ever since I was a little kid, I have absolutely loved money. So it's important that you know that about me.
Isn't that somebody? Isn't that everybody else? Isn't that everybody though? No.
Well, I learned at a young age that I could use it as a tool to get things and to do things that I wanted, probably at the age of 7. And so I was very entrepreneurial as a kid. Grew up enjoying money, had some businesses, worked in businesses, and then went on to business school. And then I became a banker. So I spent 15, 16 years helping businesses get access to financing and approving loans for them. And then I started out with my own business and really enjoyed the opportunity to learn about so many different companies. I find it very inspiring to see what people can create out of nothing because of their passion. And it's really fun for me. On the personal side, I live in Toronto, Ontario in Canada. I've got a lovely dog, Rosie. She's my sidekick, usually kicking around with me when I'm doing podcasts like this. Love roller coasters, and I absolutely love live music. So hoping to get back to both of those soon.
You love roller coasters? Really?
I do.
Really? How much do you love roller coasters? That's interesting.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, even though I'm a risk manager by background, when you can sit on a nice smooth roller coaster and go over twists and turns, it's really fun for me. I love the breeze blowing in your face and you just give up control and enjoy those thrills.
I used to, and then like the last one I was on, like the wooden ones.
Oh no, those are no good.
Yeah. Okay. Now we're on the same page here. Okay, good. Yeah, the wooden ones are no. Okay.
The new ones are super slick with the metal tracks, and they've got limited connections. Like you can't feel that big jerk when it switches to the different tracks. So no, I like the smooth ones. I'll stay off the old wooden ones.
Gotcha. Awesome. All right. So before we get started, tell us one more thing before we get into it. What is your daily routine, Tracey?
So usually I get up, I do check my emails quickly to make sure there's no emergencies. I give my dog her breakfast. We go for a walk, which is really fun, kind of clears your head. And then I usually get some work done. And then I'm either teaching class because I'm a professor at a college. I teach students to become financial planners, or I've got meetings with clients, and those are generally entrepreneurs, or doing podcasts for my own show or guesting on some other shows. And then the day kind of flows like that. A few walks during the day with the dog. And then usually you can find me doing a little bit of work at night while I'm settling down. So just a few light things in the evening.
Awesome. All right, Tracey, let's dive into this topic, how to become financially fit. Now, I'm not sure where angle I know we're more so business related, but I always tend to think that business is always personal. I don't know who said business is all, it's just business, not personal. I think that's a bunch of crap. So I don't know where you want to start, but how do you answer the question, how can someone be financially fit?
Well, first, let's start by talking about what is financial fitness, because I think it's important that we know what that is before we really dive in. And for me, it's really about taking control of your financial life, and everybody is starting in a different place. So whether, if we think about it from a physical standpoint, we might become wanting to become more physically fit. We're going to take that first step off the couch. We're going to go around the block. From a financial fitness standpoint, we might be starting to learn about bank accounts or different things like that. As we move along the spectrum for physical fitness, we might be training to be in a marathon. Same thing can be said for our financial fitness. Maybe we're training to become a more sophisticated investor if we're thinking on the personal side. And so everyone's starting in a different place. I think when we use the term financial literacy, it automatically sets people back. They feel bad. They feel ashamed. I know our school system in Canada does a very poor job, as I know the US does as well, at teaching people to become equipped for financial fitness and giving financial knowledge on the personal side, let alone teach you anything about business. And so we start our lives off without knowing anything and then feeling bad about it. And it turns to our families to teach us, and they probably were not taught. So we're in this kind of vicious cycle of nobody knows exactly. And it's a bit scary to take that first leap, but it is so worth it.
So why do you think it's so hard to manage money? I get that being one of the roots of our, education, taking us in a different place, that we just don't know. We're not aware, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is there, once we start to get to a point where, we have, say like we're in the space of maybe getting out of high school or getting out of college and really getting responsibilities finally. And you're like, wow, now I have to really learn about this stuff. Should we be waiting that long? First of all, and is it too late sometimes to really educate yourself and get better?
I think it's never too late. Obviously, the earlier, the better. And so if any parents are listening, the earlier you can start talking to your kids about money, the better. There's always lessons, doesn't matter how old they are. I was talking about earlier when I was 7, I learned that I loved money and that it could be used as a tool. And most of us form our views around money when we are 5, 6, 7 years of age. So if there was nice conversations going on in our household, or most likely there might have been some crying, some yelling, a little bit of discussion around lack of. All that stuff is going to stay with you throughout your life. So that's one of the things that contributes to make it hard for us as we get older, because we're just drawn back to those feelings and those instincts we had that we've been kind of carrying on since we were kids. But it is absolutely never too late. If you're going to be going on to post-secondary and taking on student debt to do it, you absolutely should understand, based on what I'm studying, how much am I going to make from this job? Is it reasonable that I would take on debt to do this? And there's so many resources out there. So the most important thing you can do is to ask for help. So ask for recommendations for books or podcasts or YouTube videos. You don't need to know all the answers and don't need to do it yourself, but you and your family can learn together. But you do ask people to help and give you some recommendations.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a scenario where, say, and I'm not sure, I'm sure you have some stats on this, like people are just in debt. Say if you're in debt, and we're going to get kind of bridge into the business side where, I'm spending all this money. I got back taxes. I got credit card debt and all these things, but I'm gonna build this business and everything's gonna be taken care of after a while. So is that a dangerous, type of thinking when you think like, I'm gonna, I'll still be okay. I'll just keep on building up my debt and then eventually I'll wipe it out when I make a whole lot of money. What do you say to people who have that kind of thinking?
Well, usually that thinking goes along with, if I work really hard and I sell something, I'm going to be okay. And the entrepreneurs that I work with generally are sales under 2 million. They're across all different industries. And one of the main themes I see with them is 85% of the cases is they're not making a profit. So they're busy and they're selling stuff, but they don't have it priced right. And so they're losing money on everything that they're doing, which means that debt keeps racking up, and which means they're never getting out of that hole. And so it's so important when you are running a business, whether it's a business of yourself and one person, or you've got a team in place, to make sure that you know your numbers. And that requires taking accountability, knowing them, knowing if you're making money. And again, it's not something that you need to do alone. You can certainly get support, whether it's your bookkeeper, your accountant, a financial coach to help you like me. But you've got to get a handle on the numbers and actually pay attention to them, use them to drive your business forward. and make sure that you're going to be able to make enough money to pay down the debt. I find right now with what we're seeing in social media, there's lots of hype around sales levels. And I think that's a very dangerous thing, because if we're not making money on what we're selling, we're just going to get into a bigger problem. And then the business is not going to be around. We're going to be going bankrupt in that business.
There's a lot of hype there. And I think that really clouds the judgment of people. Like, let's get into there. We'll make it up in 60 days. We'll get there and we'll take care of it. So I'm glad you're saying that. So are there any other mistakes that you see entrepreneurs do when it comes to, their finances when they start their business?
So commingling the personal and the business all together is usually one I see pretty readily. So whether you're a sole proprietor, so you're doing everything kind of in your personal name, you've just got it all mixed up, whether it's a bank account or even credit cards, or you've got an incorporated business, but you're still mixing things up. If you're running your business just on your own name, even if you use a personal credit card that's just for business and one just for personal, get separate bank accounts, make it easy on yourself. Because when you are struggling in your business, if everything's a mess, you're not going to know, is my lifestyle the problem? Is my business the problem? And you're just going to be overwhelmed and not know where to start. So let's make it easy on ourselves from the beginning.
Wow, great stuff. So what other things should entrepreneurs be accountable for when they're running their business?
So certainly the numbers, we've got to be accountable for that. We've got to look out. We've got to talk to our customers, make sure that we're actually delivering what they want, make sure that we're pricing it in a way that's appropriate. And so by appropriate, I mean to make money, because we want to be able to provide for ourselves, our families, perhaps others in the community if we're employing people. So making sure that we are making money is very important. And it's not that I want people to amass large quantities of money, but I do want people to have freedom, flexibility, and choice. So when you are profitable, then you can decide how many hours you want to work. You can decide if you want to donate some of your services pro bono to certain people who maybe cannot afford them. You might decide to grow your business larger so that you can employ people, or maybe it's just to give away your money to groups that you know who are really deserving in your community or elsewhere. So I'm really passionate about people making money.
So I like how you're saying that we're not charging enough, basically, in simple terms. Why do you think that is still a problem in today's business? Because I think we all know that. People should know that by now, that we're not charging enough. But why is it still a problem? Because I'm thinking maybe that they have the wrong target market. Maybe they want to help these people, but they don't have the money, or those kind of things. But what have you seen in this? Why people are not charging enough?
So a couple things. Number one, they're doing the math in their head. So they're thinking they're adding up all the costs, but they're not. So we're missing some costs right away. So we think we're profitable when we're not. When I talked about that when we're kids, we form our views around money, lots of times any insecurities around money are going to come up. So when we actually do a survey of the landscape, we see what we should be charging. Sometimes it's hard for us to actually have those words come out of our mouth and actually convey them to a client, because then insecurities about our worth start coming up. And then we might have, just like you mentioned, we might have the right product or service, but targeting it to the wrong people. And so I highly encourage people, whether they're getting started or just they know things are not going as well as they need to be, to analyze what's going on in the market, who's my target client, what is it that I want to offer to them, and am I doing that in a profitable way? And it's usually a pivot of, maybe I need to just articulate the value a little bit more about what I'm offering. Maybe I need to try to sell it to somebody else. Maybe I'm targeting people, like you said, who don't have the money, and I keep banging my head against the wall because I keep trying to do something that's not going to work. But with some minor tweaks, you can change all that. And that's the good thing. We all have it within our power to make those changes if we actually dig into the numbers, listen to what they're showing us, and actually make a change.
That's great stuff. Great stuff. So it sounds great, Tracey. Sounds great. Right. So how do we get to the point where we're actually assessing all these costs, like the profit margins? What should we be thinking about adding when we're talking about, building a business where we're having everything, all the expenses together and so forth? How do we do that without driving ourselves crazy in the meantime? Or maybe there are questions about us not able to afford an accountant right now. How do we get this done?
Well, I can actually tell you bookkeepers are very inexpensive. And
Okay.
so if your business is small, accountant's more expensive, but a
Yeah.
bookkeeper who can help you keep those books every single month. When you're a small business, you're not going to have very many transactions. Why not get started on the right foot? Have a bookkeeper help you. Maybe they're only working an hour a month because you don't have that many things that are happening. But if you can look at your financial position regularly, and it's important that you see it not 1 year later from when things happened, that way you can actually use the results to make changes. If you want to get started on your own, use something basic like Excel. You don't even need to use an accounting software. We don't need to incur all these expensive costs to be able to keep our eyes on the numbers. And again, it's not just those sales numbers, but what are all the expenses and what's the actual profit. The other thing that I see business owners get confused about or not really think about is the difference between those sales and expenses and then the way the cash comes into the business. So cash flow, the easiest way I can explain it is money comes in, money goes out, and that timing that it happens is usually that cash flow gap. We've got some problems. And if we're dealing with corporations and we're selling our services to them, sometimes they don't pay us at the time we do the work. Sometimes they pay us 30, 60, 90 days later. And all of a sudden we've got to pay our bills, but we don't yet have their money in our account. And so it's important to understand in your business, in your industry, what's your cash flow cycle so that you can make sure you have cash on hand when you need it.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Let's dive into what the young people are thinking about. You talk to young people all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So what's in their minds right now about their finances, about, school debt and so forth, and diving out? Because I think a lot of people are more aware now. I would hope so, about, going to school, how much it costs, and being in instant debt afterwards. What is that feeling like, and how do you give them some type of solace of after getting out of this thing from school?
I think there's more of an understanding, but I still think there's education to be done. So my first advice while people are contemplating it is to really do that budget and to include every single thing. So if you're going to be ordering from Uber Eats a couple nights a week, make sure that's in your budget. If you're taking Uber and you're not walking everywhere, because what happens is if we don't do our budget realistically, all of a sudden we run out of money partway through the year. The other thing that I don't think is on people's minds is to actually do that thought process of, okay, I'm going to school to become X. How much is X going to pay me realistically over the life of my career? And is it a reasonable amount of debt to take on? Like, will I be able to pay that back? And I'd like to see more people thinking about it from that perspective. And if it's going to be not very easy to manage, maybe it's working while you're going to school. Maybe you go to school part-time. Maybe it's living at home. And there's lots of ways to still get the education without going full-time or having that huge debt burden. I know the stats around credit cards show that post-secondary students usually come out with $2,500 to $3,000 in credit card debt. When they sign up for that credit card on campus, they didn't really know that was credit. They didn't know their credit score was getting impacted when they didn't pay it back because they wanted that bag or that t-shirt or hat, whatever they were getting. Right. And so there's lots of misunderstandings still about credit scores. Then that impacts their ability to even rent an apartment. So all that stuff kind of plays together. So the more open-minded, the more seeking of education. And that starts in school, starts with families, but then just being open-minded to, again, ask for help. Because again, there's so many great resources out there.
Awesome stuff. Okay, so this has been great. I think I still don't understand, Tracey. I still don't understand after so much education. So many years. And here's what I learned when I was a kid. Like, economically, there's always going to be a disparity. There's always going to be like your 1% of people who are going to be rich, and then you have your, I don't know how the stats work out, maybe 80-20 kind of thing. How can we get to the point where we're comfortable with money, comfortable with our finances? Do you think if somebody was in a lot of debt, that there's a way to take a 2-year sabbatical off of not spending and all those kind of things to really get back into shape how long do you think it should take for somebody to get back to where they're comfortable?
I think it really depends on the causes, whether it's a structural cause. I just interviewed someone actually on my own podcast where they talked about they had a job and they weren't making enough to even pay their rent or their food. So they were incurring all this debt, and that's a structural problem. So in that kind of case, you do need to probably file for bankruptcy and clean the slate, because you're never going to be able to get out of that. And then it's about what can you do differently going forward. And if you weren't asking for enough or looking for jobs where you're actually getting paid for all your skill sets, that's something that you can change. And so sometimes we do have to clean the slate. Most people don't want to file for bankruptcy. It's usually the structural problem, like I talked about, an illness, a job loss, a failure of a business, breakdown of a marriage, something like that. And you just get behind and you can't catch up. If you've got some debt, but you know it's reasonable that you can actually pay that back. And I would always encourage people to talk to a credit counselor, someone who can help you assess that. You don't need to be able to assess that on your own if that's challenging and you might be feeling lots of emotion around it. But could you cut back on some things? And I find typically the way that you can tackle it is not necessarily through cutting, it's more through making more money. So could you start a side hustle? Could you get a second job? Could you bring in some more income that will actually help you pay down the debt? And truly, then it could be a temporary situation where you could be back on track in a couple of years. But if you're looking for this magic solution where maybe in 3 months or 6 months time, it's all of a sudden going to work itself out, probably won't, because you probably didn't get into that place in that short of time either. It probably took longer for you to do that.
Yeah. 2 more questions for you. And I want to dive right back into from college to getting out of college. Mm-hmm. And I had some stats that I did on a particular one of my things I do called Thoughts in 10, where I went through some of the stats, and it was glaring to see that people getting out of college, it's very rare for them to actually find a position of what they went to college for. So how do you then deal with that, where it's just like, is there any sense of where people saying, why go to college? Why go to college? Because you're going to be instantly in debt, and then eventually, and then you maybe you not even have a position that you actually went to school for. So do you get that question a lot? And if so, what is your response?
So again, it's about how much debt compared to what you're going to be when you come out. I am a huge proponent of education. I think that it allows you to expand your thought process. It allows you to become more self-sufficient. You're going to develop a lot of new skills. But I do think you should be choosing something where the debt is going to be manageable. One of the things I recommend highly to my students as they're going through and they're incurring this debt is to make sure they're not neglecting the other things that go along with finding a job. So what clubs can you get involved with where maybe you can meet some people in the industry? What associations can you get involved with? What networking can you do so that you're building up those relationships, so when you are looking for a job, you have a higher chance of success? If you can go through a co-op program where you get to work during post-secondary, that's going to increase your chances for getting a job. And so being open to and listening to people when they're giving you advice about all of these things that would be helpful to do as well, versus just keeping your head in the books. I think that can help. For some people, maybe post-secondary isn't the right next move. Some people might need to go and work and figure out what they like. And so I don't encourage people to go on to school if they don't know yet, if they don't have an idea what they're really passionate about. Go and work for a while, figure out your passions, and then you can always go back to school, because education is always there for you.
Yeah. Actually, I was thinking one more question here, actually. This thing, when you're in debt, there's an emotional thing about that, where you feel embarrassed because you know that it's your fault that you put yourself in this place, or maybe you blame the banks too. So I don't know, but it's an emotional thing to have this weight on you. How do you deal with that emotional stress surrounding debt?
So first of all, don't presume it's your fault. So it could be a structural thing like I talked about, and you would be feeling bad that why can't I make this work? And that's why it's important to talk to other people. So some people are not comfortable talking to their friends or family because they don't want to share that, look what happened to me. But certainly go and talk to a credit counselor who can help you put context around the debt, help you figure out what realistically would be a budget. Are you going to be able to get out of this situation? How could you do that? So someone who has experience to help you process the information, because when you're feeling overwhelmed, desperate, emotional, embarrassed, not wanting to share with your peers or your family, you're not going to be able to take forward steps. And that's what, to me, a big part of financial fitness is. We're not perfect. We're learning every day, and we're taking imperfect action every day, but we keep trying. So when we make a mistake, we get back on the path so that it's a lifelong thing. We're not solving this all in one day.
Great stuff. That's amazing. Great stuff. So I have one last question. Tracey, I ask this of all of my guests. Goes something like this. There are people who are listening now, or actually the people are watching now, listening later, and they want to maybe do some of the same things that you're doing. They have the same goals, similar interests. They want to help people be financially fit as well. Can you tell them, and I'll put you front and center, how they can become an authority in this space?
So number one, care about people, explain things in a way that is simple and makes sense, and really get to know them. And when you're coming from a place of integrity, credibility, and kindness, you're going to have great results.
Perfect. Very succinct and very full of substance. Awesome. Awesome. Please tell people where they can find you after the show, Tracey.
Absolutely. So I talked about knowing your numbers in your business, and certainly have a free gift for everyone, a money meeting agenda that will help you get started right away. So you can download that at cashcoach.biz, and it's right on the screen. So that the first meeting might be looking at it and figuring out what does this mean, but then build some time in your calendar where you can go through this regularly and at least once a month, but spending time weekly is beneficial and helps you get more comfortable with the process. Love to hear questions or comments from anybody who's watching or listening. And the best place to reach out to me is on LinkedIn. So Tracey has an E and Bissett has 2 S's and 2 T's.
Thank you so much. That is awesome. I appreciate you. So honored to have you on the show. You were just amazing stuff. So people, we're wrapping this up because she's done everything that she's been expected to do today. So thank you so much, Tracey.
Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome. So I have one last thing to say, and that is this: build it, share it, and they will come. We will see you next time. We're out of here.
And that's a wrap for this episode of The Authority Project. Thanks so much for tuning in. And if you like what you heard, we want to hear from you. Subscribe, rate, and give an honest review. Share and tell your friends so they can hear too. And for even more authority-building tactics, be sure to sign up at theauthorityletter.com. Get free weekly content and ongoing digital product giveaways to help you on your entrepreneurial journey. We certainly hope you got a key takeaway, or maybe an aha moment from today's broadcast. Just remember, it's your authority. Build it, share it, and they will come. Until next time.